Hello everyone, happy Fantasy Friday. Today we'll be reviewing, all spoiler-free, The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. But first, quick announcement. I will have my Discord linked top line in the description, but we will be reading Brandon Sanderson's The Way of King. This is the first book in Stormlight Archive, and that'll be going on in the Discord. And yeah, I'll do reviews of this book and then the following books as well. But in the Discord, we'll be able to talk as we read through it together. So that'll be cool. I'll start reading the 22nd or the 23rd and posting in the Discord. So if you don't have the book yet, don't worry, you're just watching this now around when I'm posting this video. You have time to get Brandon Sanderson's The Way of Kings. Anyway, Joe Abercrombie, First Law Trilogy, Book 1, The Blade Itself. I read this like 8 months ago, so it's not really super fresh in my mind, but I'm started reading Book 2 of the series, Before They Are Hanged, and I'm buddy reading that with Slowly Read. So I figured I might as well do a review for Blade Itself. The Blade Itself is a grimdark, high fantasy book. Let's talk about the plot. So the plot... Nothing really happens. Is it a spoiler to say nothing happens? No, but it's a very slow-paced book. I know I'm being a little hyperbolic, but it is a slow-paced book. Plot points aren't really, major. There's some minor things here and there, but it's more like character-driven, interpersonal plot sort of things happening. But Joe Abercrombie's writing style, I will give him props. He can make a conversation about the weather interesting, and in fact he did. There's a 2 to 3 page conversation about how hot this guy was, and he was wearing armor, and he had to wear armor all day, and he had to listen to this nonsense, and yeah, but it was a great conversation because he was just oh, it's so hot. Anyway, that character I'm referring to is Colonel West, General West, Colonel West, I don't know. Cornel West. I forget his rank, but he's in the military. He's not royal, and royalty is very important in this society. So if you're not royalty, but you have a somewhat high rank in the military, that's very impressive. So he's kind of the rags to riches, but he's in the riches area now. But he's still not a lord or a king or anything. And yeah, West is by far the most sympathetic character, or again, this is a grimdark fantasy book, so a lot of the characters are fairly morally gray. For most of this book, West seems like the good guy, but I wouldn't say any of these characters are good role models for anyone at all, to be clear. And there's disturbing scenes, that brings me to the second character, Glokta. He was a prisoner of war. He was a war hero. He was tortured. This was 10 years ago. And then he became crippled because of the torture was so brutal. But now the twist is he is now a torturer. So there might be some, John McCain, Guantanamo Bay thing going on there where, the tortured becomes the torturer. But I guess it is different than that because McCain wasn't literally torturing people. He was just approving of torture. But Glokta is literally the torturer. I think he's everyone's favorite character, maybe just because it sucks to be a cripple. Doesn't it? You can barely walk around. He talks about stairs. He's oh man, I hate stairs. And it's again, it goes into the overall Joe Abercrombie writing style of just not explaining everything, but explaining characters' thoughts in a very detailed way. And just, inner monologues and inner snarkiness. Glokta has a lot of inner snarkiness when, a lord is talking about how, of course I'm not corrupt. And he's yeah, sure. It's great. The third character is kind of a guy who fences. He's like a fencing prodigy, and he's a lord, and he's hot stuff. I won't swear. And he's basically like a medieval frat guy. Like, he trains fencing all day. He's a womanizer. He's like with the boys in the evenings, and they like drink and play cards or whatever. But like, his fencing coach is hilarious because it's like, you weren't here at 5 a.m.? What is the matter with you? Did you have one beer last night? 30 laps. This is the youngest character, and probably of our main characters, probably is the one who we see grow the most. But like, it's not like he's like a great guy at the end of the book. He just goes from being like a pretentious, spoiled a-hole to like a less pretentious, spoiled a-hole. Now we're going to talk about Logan Nine Fingers. Logan has 9 fingers, of course, and he's a barbarian from the north. The north is like kind of like the wilderness, sort of, and like clans and tribes and, leaders and stuff. And Logan gets separated from his hunting party. I think like the first pages of the book, this is where it picks up. He's almost dead, but he got away somehow, and he lost everyone. And he kind of starts walking towards civilization. Logan's pretty awesome, too. Logan might be people's favorite characters. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think is your favorite character. But yeah, I mean, Logan's just kind of a survivor. He's not like a super driven character, so he's a little bit boring at first. And it kind of goes into like my joke at the beginning that nothing happens in this book throughout like the entire plot of this book. He kind of gets like... he meets new people, I guess, and he certainly has an interesting perspective on the world. And then we follow around Logan's old crew a few times. I'll be honest, these chapters didn't really do much for me. I don't know. I'm sure it'll tie together at some point, but it added to the slowness following around Dogface or whatever, Dogman and Three Trees. These guys, they only had a few chapters, but they were fairly irrelevant. Lastly, Farah, another character. Farah's the 6th perspective that I'm talking about, and she's the only woman character. She's a woman of color. She was like a former slave, but she got away, and yeah, she's just running. And she's interesting magically, I guess, because she like doesn't take injuries or damage or anything, like, and she can like run forever. She's kind of like just superhuman, just like better at, I don't know. Yeah. We'll learn more about her powers. Oh, and Logan has some powers, which we find out about right away, that are vague and seem fairly useless, but they might do something at some point. And yeah, there is like a few other magical characters that have more strong, explicit magical powers. But I would say in terms of like the magic system, it's fairly soft. You don't really know what people can do, why they can do it. It feels like Lord of the Rings-esque a little bit. And yeah, not to get too like political or overly woke, this book did face some backlash with, it only had one woman character, and she was like barely around. And as I said, she's a woman of color, and she doesn't feel pain or get injured the same way as, like the white people in the book do. And that all plays into a common real world racial misconception, which is that people of color are more tolerant to pain. And in fact, there's like studies on this, questionnaires to doctors saying, and like it's like a shocking number of doctors think people of color are better at tolerating pain than white people, which is just objectively not true. It's like 1 in 2 doctors or something. I'll put like, screenshot. But yeah, so I mean, that was obviously some criticism. And this trilogy came out in the mid-2000s. So these studies they definitely weren't widely known about. They weren't really talked about. And Joe Abercrombie is not a doctor, so, he wouldn't necessarily know about these studies or have been taught about these studies in medical school, which is something that they are teaching in medical school now, which is great. But yeah, now that we do know about it, and now that we do know the problematic nature of these racial prejudices within our society, it's good to point them out and hopefully better ourselves and better future works of writing. But yeah, definitely don't cancel Joe Abercrombie over this. I don't think he did this with any malice. And then as far as the gender thing goes, yes, this is a conversation that's been had after these books have been written in a lot of different contexts within the writing community and reading community and fantasy community. We know adult fantasy has too many male characters and protagonists, and we know young adult fantasy has too many female protagonists. We know this, but putting it out there, get different perspectives. More perspectives, the better. At least that's my opinion. So yeah, final thoughts. I kind of think 3.5 stars is good. It's just a little more slow paced than I would like. A lot of times there just wasn't enough purpose in terms of character motives and stuff. But to be clear, I think less of this book than the majority of the fantasy booktube and just fantasy reading community generally thinks of this book. Most people love it, honestly. And if you like longer books that have kind of grim dark themes, yeah, you'll like this book. Yeah. I mean, you may not love it, I don't love it, but I like it. And I'm continuing on with the series. So I have decently high hopes. And I just hope more things happen in this next book, right? We'll see though. But yeah, comment, subscribe. Let me know if you disagree with anything I said. That might be a little it's a little weird, this video, because I got more political than not political at all, which is usually where I'm at in fantasy reviews. But I kind of had to with this just because it's something that the author himself has talked about, right? So it's definitely fair game. But yeah, anyway, comment, subscribe. See you guys next Fantasy Friday. And again, reminder, boom, The Way of Kings. Read it with me. We're going to try to read all 3 books before the 4th one comes out in November. I know it's very aggressive, but we can do it, I believe. And if we don't do it, it's not a big deal. But yeah, see you guys. Thanks for watching.